Bugatti is one of the many brands of cars owned by German auto major Volkswagen, costing upwards of millions of dollars. Bugatti cars are known for their design, beauty and fast speed.
My name is Christian von Koenigsegg. I'm 40 years old, and for half of my life I've been on the quest to be a leader in the hypercar industry, utilizing Swedish design.
Behind the Bugatti Veyron, Ferdinand Piëch unleashed the full power of the Volkswagen Group, turning impossible engineering problems into reality. In a fighter jet hangar in Sweden, Christian von Koenigsegg built a hypercar empire with almost no resources, only obsession.
I had started my first company when I was 19. It was a trading company, had nothing to do with cars or design or anything.
Bugatti's corporate perfection versus Koenigsegg's radical reinvention of what a car should be. From 300+ miles per hour runs to broken speed records and split-second drag race verdicts, the battle has never produced a simple winner. What happens when money and obsession collide at the limits of physics? So what really happened? And what does the evidence reveal? Let's explore the story. Ferdinand Piëch's impossible car. To understand what Bugatti brought to the table, you have to understand what the Volkswagen Group actually is. In the late 1990s, when Ferdinand Piëch began sketching the first ideas for what would become the Veyron, he was not a man operating on hope and ambition. He was the chairman of one of the largest automotive conglomerates on the planet.
Volkswagen's chairman after a dispute over the CEO, 78-year-old Ferdinand Piëch is a major figure in the German auto industry.
A corporation that owned Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini, Bentley, Seat, Skoda, and more. When Piëch decided he wanted to build the fastest, most powerful road car the world had ever seen, he did not have to convince investors or chase funding rounds. He had only to point in a direction, and an enormous machine of engineers, suppliers, and resources would begin moving toward it. The development of the Veyron took the better part of a decade. That timeline was not the result of incompetence. It was the result of the target being genuinely, fundamentally impossible by every standard that existed at the time. 1,000 horsepower in a road car.
Bugatti revived a legend and created the world's first hypercar. Over 1,000 horsepower, faster than 400 kilometers per hour.
Was not an ambition that the automotive industry had previously tested. The engineering problems that emerged were not the kind you solve by working harder. They were the kind you solve by inventing things that do not yet exist. Bugatti needed tires capable of sustaining speeds above 400 kilometers per hour, tires that had never been made. Michelin had to build an entirely new product category from scratch. The development cost for that single component alone was staggering, and it was one line item among hundreds. The engine itself, the 8.0-liter W16, was a configuration that had never existed in a production car. 4 banks of 4 cylinders joined at a narrow angle with 4 turbochargers feeding an architecture that required cooling systems on a scale that defied conventional automotive logic. 10 radiators. The Veyron needed 10 separate radiators to manage the thermal output of its own engine. A standard high-performance road car uses 1. A racing car uses 2 or 3. 10 represents a scale of heat management that sits closer to industrial machinery than to anything the road car world had previously attempted. The transmission was custom-engineered from nothing. The brakes required new carbon ceramic compounds developed specifically for the forces a car at this speed would generate. The chassis was rebuilt from first principles. Every single supplier Bugatti approached during development responded in one of 2 ways. They said it could not be done, or they came back with something that had to be thrown away and started again. The development cost of the Veyron. From the first sketches on that bullet train to the moment the first customer took delivery in 2000, and they 5 ran into figures that most standalone car companies could not sustain across their entire operational lifetimes. And this is the critical point. Bugatti did not just build a car. Bugatti deployed a system. The Volkswagen Group did not merely write checks. It contributed engineering knowledge, supplier relationships, testing infrastructure, and institutional credibility that money alone cannot purchase. When Bugatti needed a problem solved, it could reach into the combined intellectual capital of an organization that had spent decades solving hard problems at scale. The Veyron was not the product of one team's brilliance. It was the product of an entire industrial ecosystem pointed at a single target. What does it cost to build the impossible when you have that behind you? The honest answer is, it costs whatever it costs, because the cost is not the constraint. Born in a fighter jet hangar in 1994, while Volkswagen Group was busy acquiring Lamborghini and preparing to spend the next decade building the most expensive road car development program in automotive history, a 22-year-old Swede with no formal engineering degree and no institutional backing incorporated Koenigsegg Automotive AB.
In my life, I've been on the quest to be a leader in the hypercar industry, utilizing Swedish design combined with visionary technical solutions.
The founding capital was a combination of personal savings from earlier business ventures and a grant of $200,000 from Sweden's Technical Development Board. His father became an early investor. The runway, measured in honest terms, was short. The location chosen for operations was a decommissioned military airbase in Ängelholm, in the south of Sweden. The practical advantages were obvious: large hangar space, long runways, and the kind of geographical isolation that means nobody calls the authorities when you run an engine at full throttle at 2 in the morning. But the symbolic weight of that choice. Christian von Koenigsegg was not setting up in a modern industrial facility with clean rooms and precision tooling already installed. He was moving into a building where fighter jets used to park, converting it piece by piece into something resembling a car manufacturer, because that was what he could afford and what he needed. The early years were defined by a single inescapable reality. If Koenigsegg needed something, Koenigsegg had to make it. Not because there was a philosophy demanding it, but because the things they needed did not exist anywhere else at any price. There were no suppliers for the kind of carbon fiber monocoque they wanted. There was no off-the-shelf gearbox that could handle the power outputs they were targeting at the weight they required. There was no engine management software sophisticated enough for what they were building. Every component that forms the foundation of a Koenigsegg vehicle was either designed entirely in-house or developed in direct collaboration with suppliers who had never previously attempted anything like it. Consider the staffing reality at any point in Koenigsegg's first decade of existence. While Bugatti was drawing on the combined workforce of a global conglomerate, Koenigsegg was operating with a team that numbered in the dozens, and at certain points considerably fewer. Engineers who designed the suspension also contributed to bodywork decisions. People who worked on engine calibration also participated in aerodynamic testing. The kind of specialization that large corporate engineering programs take for granted simply did not exist. What existed instead was a degree of problem-solving intensity that comes only from necessity. When the team is small enough that every person must understand every part of the car, the quality of understanding that results is of a fundamentally different kind. What made Koenigsegg's survival possible, and eventually its success, was not money. It was vertical integration so complete that it became a competitive advantage. Christian von Koenigsegg holds patents on technologies that LAR manufacturers have studied, admired, and in several cases been unable to replicate. The free-valve camless engine technology, proprietary transmission architecture that handles power delivery in ways that conventional gearboxes cannot. Carbon fiber construction methods developed because no existing supplier could meet the specification. A dihedral synchrohelix door mechanism that was designed not as a styling statement, but as a functional solution to entry and exit at low vehicle heights. Every one of these innovations was born not from a large R&D budget pursuing incremental improvement, but from a small team with no choice but to solve hard problems in new ways. The absence of resources, paradoxically, became the engine of invention. The technology war here is what makes the Bugatti and Koenigsegg comparison genuinely interesting and genuinely difficult. They are not competing on the same terms. Bugatti's engineering philosophy is built on the foundation of refinement, integration, and the relentless optimization of known approaches pushed to their absolute limits. Koenigsegg's engineering philosophy is built on the rejection of conventional approaches wherever a better solution can be found. One company asks, "How do we do this better than it has ever been done?" The other asks, "Should we even be doing it this way at all?" Bugatti's W16 engine is the clearest expression of the first philosophy. There is nothing theoretically novel about the W16 configuration. It is, at its core, an internal combustion engine with more cylinders and more forced induction than any road car had previously attempted. The genius is not in the concept. The genius is in the execution. Making 16 cylinders, 4 turbochargers, and 8 liters of displacement cooperate reliably, responsively.
Bugatti's W16 engine. Okay, this one has 8 liters, 16 cylinders, quad turbos.
And comfortably enough for daily use, required engineering of a depth and precision that most teams would have abandoned years before completion. Bugatti did not invent a new kind of engine. Bugatti perfected an approach to power that everyone else had decided was not worth pursuing. Koenigsegg's free valve technology represents the second philosophy in its purest form. Conventional internal combustion engines use camshafts, rotating shafts with lobes that physically push valves open and closed on a fixed schedule, determined by the cam profile. The system has been standard for over a century because it works. Koenigsegg looked at it and asked whether it needed to exist at all. The answer, after years of development, was no. Free valve replaces mechanical camshafts with pneumatic, hydraulic, and electronic actuators that open and close each valve independently on demand in any pattern the software specifies. The result is an engine that can alter its behavior in real time, running on fewer cylinders at low load, adjusting valve timing for maximum efficiency or maximum power on a millisecond basis, and doing things with combustion chemistry that camshaft-driven engines cannot physically achieve. Ferrari has not replicated it. Porsche has not replicated it. The technology exists in commercial production applications today, and its origin is a small Swedish company that needed a better solution, because the conventional one was not good enough for what they were building. The transmission story follows a similar arc. Bugatti's dual-clutch 7-speed gearbox is an extraordinary piece of engineering, fast, precise, and capable of managing torque outputs that would destroy most competing systems. It was developed specifically for the Veyron platform. Because nothing available in the market could meet the requirement, the development cost was enormous. The result was a gearbox that functions brilliantly within its design parameters. Koenigsegg responded to the same problem by designing a completely different kind of transmission, one that eliminated some of the fundamental compromises of dual-clutch architecture entirely. The light-speed transmission, as it became known, uses a different mechanical approach to achieve faster shifts with less complexity and less weight than conventional systems. It is not simply better at the same thing. It is doing a different thing and achieving a better outcome by virtue of that difference. Weight is where the philosophy war becomes most visible. The Bugatti Veyron weighs over 2,000 kilograms. The Koenigsegg Jesko weighs under 1,400. That gap, roughly 600 kilograms.
This car is very, very lightweight. It weighs
1,400 kilos curb weight or just over, and dry weight is around 1,200 kilos.
Is not a stylistic choice. It is a statement about what each company believes matters most. Bugatti's weight comes from the structural requirements of containing enormous power, the passenger comfort systems that the brand's identity demands, and the engineering cost of making all of that work together reliably. Koenigsegg's weight target comes from the conviction that every gram removed from a car is a performance gain that requires no additional horsepower, no additional fuel, and no additional complexity to justify. Both positions are coherent. Both produce extraordinary machines, but they produce extraordinary machines of fundamentally different characters. And the difference in philosophy produces a difference in cost, structure that no amount of corporate backing can simply override. Where the record books lead speed records are the currency of the hypercar world. They are imperfect, subject to conditions, configurations, and interpretation, but they are the closest thing the industry has to an objective verdict. And in the contest between Bugatti and Koenigsegg, the record books tell a story that neither side can claim as a simple victory. 2017. A stretch of closed Nevada highway. A Koenigsegg Agera RS, owned by a private customer who had reportedly demanded a demonstration of what the car was genuinely capable of, was run in two directions to eliminate the influence of wind and gradient. The two-way average came out at 277. It was the highest verified two-way average speed ever recorded by a production car at that moment in history. The record that Bugatti had carried since the Veyron's era. Gone. Taken not by a rival corporation with comparable resources, but by a Swedish company that had started in a military hangar with a team of a few dozen people, and a founder who had never studied engineering formally. 2019. The Air-Alessian test track in Germany. A specially prepared Bugatti Veyron Supersport 300 Plus, driven by factory driver Andy Wallace, passed through the speed traps at 304.77, 3 miles per hour. The 300-mile-per-hour barrier, the equivalent of the 4-minute mile for road cars, the number that experts had debated for years as a theoretical ceiling, was broken. One way, on a purpose-built closed circuit, with a car that carried bodywork modifications, classifying it as a prototype of the production model rather than a standard customer vehicle. The conditions matter, and the record books account for them. But the speed itself, 304 miles per hour, is real, documented, and verified. Bugatti had crossed a threshold that no production car had previously reached. January of 2026 brought the confrontation that enthusiasts had been demanding for years. A direct drag race between the Bugatti Veyron Supersport and the Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute.
Drag race between a Bugatti Veyron Supersport and a Koenigsegg Jesko. Well, I'm going to find out by racing them.
Arranged by Autoblog on closed tarmac, 6 runs. Both cars valued at close to $7 million each. The result was a split decision that perfectly captured the nature of the rivalry itself. The Jesko Absolute won the half-mile. Its lighter construction and savage mid-range power delivery pulled it ahead as speeds climbed, and the weight disadvantage of the Veyron began to compound. The Veyron Supersport won the quarter-mile. Its all-wheel drive system and brutally efficient launch. Traction gave it an early advantage that the rear-wheel drive Jesko could not overcome before the finish line arrived. 6 races, no clear winner. 2 different machines that are each better on their own terms than they are at being what the other one is. And then there is the number that hangs over every comparison between these two companies, the number that the Jesko Absolute has not yet officially run. 330 miles per hour, 531 kilometers per hour. Koenigsegg's own theoretical projection for what their most extreme car is capable of, derived from aerodynamic modeling and simulation. it has not been verified in a recognized record attempt. The Jesko Absolute does hold one verified world record, the fastest 0 to 400 kilometers per hour and back to zero sprint, completed in 27.83 seconds on a closed circuit. That is a different kind of record from top speed. But it is a number that required genuine engineering achievement to produce. The 330 miles per hour projection remains, for now, a claim awaiting its moment of proof. Whether that moment comes, and what it will mean when it does, is perhaps the most compelling open question in the automotive world today. The rivalry that changed everything. Strip away the numbers for a moment. Strip away the records, and the horsepower figures, and the drag race results, and the theoretical projections. What remains, when you look at the Bugatti and Koenigsegg story, as a story about what human beings can build, and what it costs to build it, is something more interesting than any single performance metric can capture. Bugatti proved something specific. It proved that institutional ambition, backed by sufficient resources and driven by a leader who refused to accept any compromise on the original target, can produce engineering that redefines an entire category. The Veyron did not simply break records. It invented the concept of the Hyper GT. A car that could devastate every performance benchmark in existence and then take you to dinner in comfort. That combination had never previously existed. Creating it required the kind of sustained, coordinated engineering effort that only a major corporate program can sustain. The Volkswagen Group's involvement was not a crutch that weakened the achievement. It was a prerequisite for the achievement being possible at all. Koenigsegg proved something different, and in some ways more unsettling for the established automotive order. It proved that the conventional wisdom about what you need to compete at the highest level of the car industry is wrong. You do not need a century of heritage. You do not need the backing of a global corporation. You do not need hundreds of engineers and decades of institutional knowledge. What you need is a founder who is obsessive enough to invent what does not exist, a team small enough to move fast, and a philosophy disciplined enough to reject every shortcut that would compromise the fundamental goal. The patents that Koenigsegg holds, the technologies it has developed and deployed, the records it has set. None of it was supposed to be possible for a company of its size. The fact that it is possible changes the way you have to think about what possibility actually means in this industry. The resource gap between these two companies is not a gap that has closed over time. Bugatti, now operating under the Bugatti Rimac structure with continued Porsche involvement, remains backed by infrastructure that Koenigsegg cannot match. Koenigsegg, still based in Engelholm, still building cars in relatively small numbers.
This is a validation car that we built according to the principle of the production line and is getting very, very close.
With a team that remains a fraction of the size of its rivals, has not suddenly become a large company. The disparity that existed at the beginning of this rivalry exists today. What has changed is what Koenigsegg has been able to achieve despite that disparity, and what that achievement implies about the relationship between resources and results. Two different kinds of courage built these two companies. Piëch's courage was the courage of a powerful man who refused to accept the limits that other powerful men had decided were reasonable. He had every advantage available to him and chose to use them in pursuit of something that, even with those advantages, took nearly a decade and almost broke several engineering teams in the process. That is not a small thing. History is full of powerful people who chose safe targets. Piëch chose an impossible one. Christian von Koenigsegg's courage was the courage of a person who looked at a situation where the rational response was to scale back his ambitions, make something achievable, and build slowly within his means, and chose not to. he decided to compete against the most powerful automotive organizations in the world on his own terms, using technologies he invented himself from a starting point of almost no material advantage at all. Both forms of courage produced extraordinary results. Both left permanent marks on what road cars are capable of being. Neither one is diminished by the existence of the other. The answer to who actually won depends entirely on how you keep score. If the metric is verified top speed, Bugatti holds 304 miles per hour against Koenigsegg's verified 277.9. If the metric is technical innovation per engineer, the comparison is not close, and it does not favor the larger company. If the metric is achievement relative to available resources, Koenigsegg's story is one of the most extraordinary in the history of the automotive industry, and possibly one of the most extraordinary in the history of manufacturing, full stop. If the metric is the question of which company has pushed the other to greater heights than either would have reached alone, the answer is both, simultaneously, in every year since the Veyron first appeared. The rivalry produced the result, and the result is that the world now has two companies, operating from fundamentally different positions, building machines that would have been considered impossible if either of them had been working alone. Two companies, two philosophies, one rivalry that rewrote every rule the automotive world understood. Bugatti proved that scale and ambition, pointed at the right target, produces engineering that defines an era. Koenigsegg proved something quieter but more dangerous, that a single obsessive mind, working from almost nothing, can compete with the most powerful machines on the planet and win. The records are in the books. The drag race ended split. The Jesco's 330 miles per hour still waits. This story is not finished. Hit like, comment which philosophy you respect more, Bugatti's billion-dollar machine or Koenigsegg's Hangar, and subscribe because the next chapter is already being built.